Hello, everyone. Welcome to Voices of Impact, where we sit down with bold, forward thinking leaders who are redefining success to the modern world of business, tech, and transformation. So, I'm your host, Veena Ramaswamy, executive coach and founder of Beautifully Empowered Coaching Consulting. And I'm passionate about helping leaders align purpose, performance, and presence in the age of AI. So we've had three amazing episodes with awesome leaders so far. It's been fantastic, especially the energy in the room. So today's episode is Clarity, Influence, and Growth, Lessons from a Customer Success Leader. Rob Haber is a powerhouse VP in customer success, known for scaling teams from 35 to over 450, building customer first cultures and driving measurable impact at every stage of growth. He's proof that leadership isn't just about managing numbers, but it's also about inspiring people, communicating with purpose, and building systems that sustain success. So, Rob, welcome to Voices of Impact.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course, excited to have you. So, yeah, you've had such an incredible journey scaling organizations and developing leaders along the way. So, can you walk us through your path and what first drew you to customer success as a leadership discipline?
Yeah, sure. I'll try and keep it as brief as I can. My career has gotten longer and longer as the years have ticked by, but yeah, I mean I've been in software for close to 20 years now. Somehow, I initially started on the sales side. I was at a small online job board startup called theladders.com, where I was part of a team that was charged with upselling the paid member base with things like resume writing services, career coaching services, and that team really quickly grew from two, three, four people to about 60 within 12 months. And I, at age about 25, found myself managing a sales team of about a dozen people. And I did that for a couple of years until I sort of hit this point where I had to take a step back and think about the things that really mattered to me and the things that I really loved and the things that maybe weren't as good a fit. So what I really loved was coaching and mentoring of employees. I really loved the build of process and policy, the creative problem solving associated with working at a high growth startup, working with customers specifically. What just didn't click for me particularly was the sort of transactional nature of new business sales. I didn't love, meet someone, build a relationship, move on to the next person. I really wanted to continue nurturing those relationships and, really seeing through what I was promising we would deliver. So I sort of felt at that moment that that sentiment coupled with this sort of intrinsic desire to help people, maybe a post-sales role would be a better fit for me. So I kind of sought that out, helped a buddy get a business off the ground for about a year or so, and then bumped into a former colleague from the ladders again at who was at a company called Contently, and they were 8-person B2B SaaS startup that was content marketing software, really scrappy, really early days. The pitch was basically, we need someone to come and manage our customers and manage our clients. And if the company grows, who knows? I spent 6 years there. It was a very intentional risk on my part. I figured if I was ever going to get into post-sales leadership, this was the perfect opportunity, build something from the ground up. So I joined the really silly early startup days stuff, like Silicon Valley, the TV show style stuff. We built our own furniture in the office, push up contests on Fridays, a lot of that stuff that seems like very passe now. But I spent 6 years there, and that's really was a pivotal moment in my career. I can talk a little bit later about things that happened in my time there that were foundational for me. But 6 years at a startup is a lifetime. My team grew from just me to about, I don't know, 15 or 20 folks, mostly CSMs, couple support, couple implementation. In that moment, I kind of felt like I needed to prove to myself and to my resume that I could not just,
Mhm.
to use the writing terminology, create something from nothing, but also edit something that currently existed. So took a role at another marketing software firm where I was, overseeing CS and planning to move to support. Spent a couple of years there. We were servicing large B2B enterprise again on the event marketing side. Built out a really successful land and expand model. That was a really exciting component of that role. And then I heard from this company, Attentive, who reached out saying, "Hey, we have, $500 million in funding. The CS team is 35 people. We're planning to grow to 80 by end of year. Uh, Come help us build this thing out." And I was really keen on managing a team of triple digits. So I took the plunge, started there, March 16th, 2020, which was a very interesting time to start a new job. But it was a time when e-com companies were doing really, really well. And we grew infinitely faster than we expected to. We grew from, in 3 years, we grew from about 50 million in revenue to about 500 million in revenue. Our customer base grew from under 1,000 to about 10 or 12,000. The broader CS team grew from about 30 folks to about 400, 450, something like that, of which I oversaw about 200, 250 at its zenith. Um, and yeah, I was really found that was a really sort of second moment of career acceleration for me and redefining kind of what is possible and how quickly we can move things forward. So, from there, I moved to another company called Aspire, which is influencer marketing software. I was there for a very short period of time. My clients there kept talking to me about this company, Triple Whale. It just like sprang out of nowhere. I kept hearing it every day, over and over and over again. And they happened to reach out to me and say, "Hey, come help us build this thing out." And so jumped over, and now here we are. And now I'm talking to you. That's my storied career at
Amazing.
this point.
Oh my goodness. Wow. No, kudos to you. I mean, that's so powerful and so much success. I love how you just take on challenges, and then you're scaling and you know what you want, what you're doing. So, this is inspiring. Wow. So, that's great. Yeah.
Thank you.
So
Yeah,
you've
I
led
got a piece of
teams.
advice early on in my career to always
Yeah,
run towards your next role instead of running away from something. So I've historically tried to
exactly.
take on
Yeah.
things that seemed like they would be an interesting challenge to solve, an interesting problem to dive into.
Mhm.
I tend to think that those are more fun situations than sort of everything's going great. Come in and just maintain the thing.
Right. Exactly. You're always like learning and growing, right? And getting out of your comfort zone. I think that's very important in the executive space, especially nowadays, is just, I mean, what's going to happen if you challenge yourself? What's the worst thing that's going to happen, right? You always keep learning, you always keep growing. And
Yeah.
that's how you go to the next role, the next level. So, wow, it's amazing. It's very inspiring, though, for sure. Yeah, so you led teams through hyper growth and major transformation. So, what are the key strategies or frameworks that helped you manage like scale without losing the human connection?
Yeah, I think that from a strategy perspective, it's really remaining incredibly nimble and um, prioritizing speed rather than perfection. I think, the classic saying, "Don't let perfect be the enemy of good," is really important when you're scaling and growing. I also think that holding nothing sacred is really critical. As I mentioned earlier, briefly, my time at Attentive in that growth period redefined what is possible in my mind. Projects that I would have thought would have taken, 6 or 7 months, we were knocking out in like 4 weeks. Um, and I think part of that is because we were like, whatever we put in place today is going to be relevant for 3 to 6 months, and then we're going to have to rethink it anyway. So let's just get this off the ground and get it done, and move forward as quickly as we possibly can, rather than this thing that I think a lot of early stage startups do, which is focus on quote unquote scalability right out the gate. Certainly, I think it's important to keep an eye towards the future, but I've always been more a fan of sort of like solving today's problems today and tomorrow's problems tomorrow. That's not to say just build things with no thought involved and no concern for can this thing scale, but it is to say don't let something that doesn't feel scalable um, prevent you from doing something that would really benefit your customers. So strategically,
Mhm.
I've held that in as a concept in high regard. Um, I also think that building a culture where your team feels empowered to raise problems and to tell you when something sucks is, I think, really important.
Yeah,
What I've always said is if I don't know something's a problem, I can't solve it. From like a servant
right,
leadership perspective, I think a big important component of any leadership role is ensuring that you are spending time building things that will deliver value to your customers and also time that will deliver value to your team, and thinking of your
right,
CSMs, your frontline CSMs as a constituency of your clients as a leader, and building things that are going to make their jobs easier, which is going to ultimately translate into better outcomes for customers as well. If you're able to knock down the things that are really painful for them, there's time savings associated with it, there's morale associated with it, there's goodwill associated with it. So I think for me the reasons to ensure that you're focused on again, sort of from a strategic perspective, delivering to your team is as important as it is to deliver to your customers. So bit of a ramble, but
Mhm.
that's sort of strategically how I have sort of thought about how we sort of scale and solve problems and what we build and when.
Yeah, I love how you talked about the first of all speed, especially in startups. It's all about speed over perfection. Because I think for startups especially, we just so focus on like making it the product or the service a perfect. I think it was another episode we talked about progress over perfection, but just getting it out there and then doing what like okay, well, what are the people saying? What are the users saying? So that's definitely one. And then yes, it's not just the customers. People forget the team, and that's a huge point that you brought up. It's like focus on your customers and add value to your team, make sure they're empowered and fostering that culture at the same time, which is a challenge these days, but it's very important for that bigger impact. So, absolutely, I love that. And now with AI coming into place, right? How are you leveraging data or automation to enhance, like, and not replace the customer experience?
Yeah, it's a tricky slope. I I think right now, if I may, sorry CS in advance for this, but I don't think that CS has a great consistent, clear playbook and consistent, clear perspective on how to snap AI in. It feels like a lot of the AI tooling that is out there is kind of more the same of what CS has always done with software, just a little bit better. So, historically, CSPs have been, to be a little bit reductive about it, have been effectively uh, a health dashboard with good notifications. And I see a lot of the AI tooling right now more or less replacing that, doing it a little bit better, serving CSMs, better content and better data in places where they want it. So in other words, rather than having to go into your health dashboard and click through a bunch of stuff and find your inbox within your CSP, you can get notifications via Slack of more detail and more information, which is definitely good. But I don't view it as sort of like a moonshot 1 to 10 game changer. I think it's very helpful, but um, I think we have yet to see like a real transformational approach to AI across CS at this point. Certainly, I think that a lot of what people are doing is very helpful, getting a lot better context and a lot better information for things like call prep, email follow-up, builds. These things are really helpful for sure. Um, but that's how I've sort of seen it applied to this point for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like these are like real points, right? So, I mean, it's not. I know like some people think it's AI replacing it, but it's just enhancing it, right? It's the human connection with the AI, and I know we had some like conversations before that, but absolutely. So a lot of good
Yeah,
stuff to talk
I think the really effective CS leaders right now are thinking about how do I replace the things that are just painful to do for CSMs and give them
about.
better leverage to be the human touch. I think as the robots get smarter and smarter and can do more and more things that humans can, um,
Right?
doubling down on that actual relationship and that actual human connection, I think becomes more and more
Exactly.
important for CS as an
Yeah.
industry. And so,
Yeah.
figuring out how we can enable CSMs to operate in that framework is, I think, going to be pretty critical over the next 12 to 24 months.
Yeah, exactly. Putting that in the forefront, right? Because, yeah, like you said, it's not replacing it. It's like, especially in, I think, customer success, that's why it's called customer. Like, you have to really connect on a deeper level, right? And bringing that empathy and all of that into place and understanding your customers really well should be at the forefront than just like, okay, use an AI tool, because that's not what they want, right? So I had this conversation about someone wanting like she didn't even want to go and talk to an agent. She was like, I'm a customer, but I don't want to sit here and talk to some agents, right? I want to talk to a real person. So having that at the forefront in CS is important. So I'm glad you talked about that. But let's now dive into maybe some of the challenges. So what are some other the biggest challenges that you faced in high growth environments and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I think that the biggest challenge is in a high growth startup situation, you have to realize as a CS leader that every department is in a different place along the sort of maturity curve, right? Like your sales team might be operating at a very high maturity level, while your engineering team may be operating at a very low maturity level. And those, as a CS team, you are effectively the friction point of all of those different, those different clashes. because everything that a company does affects the customer, and that ultimately comes back to CS and CSMs. And kind of meeting people where they are and communicating with the different teams and the different leaders across, sort of cross-functionally, understanding that and keeping that in mind, I think is a really critical component to one, kind of getting your agenda done. But two, realistically, like not ripping your own hair out because you're frustrated that people are not quote unquote doing what they should be doing or what have you, which is I think an easy trap to fall into. So I think that's definitely a big challenge is you know, different folks being in different places and focus on different things are that impact you directly. I think a secondary major challenge definitely is, balancing as we touched on before, that that delicate balance between speed and quality, and that goes for realistically like any department across a startup.
Right.
Um, you know, Speed is good, but not at the full cost of something effective.
Right.
So you have to kind of find that sweet spot that's that fairly ubiquitous 80/20 rule, like 80% of the value for 20% of the effort, or what have you. But you don't want to do you know 30% of the value for 20% of the effort. You need to make sure that whatever you're taking to market from a process perspective and a problem solving perspective is actually going to solve the problem satisfactorily. So I think those are probably two of the bigger challenges that I've seen in high growth situations. And then I think the third
Mm-hmm.
is kind of what's the best way to articulate this? Like not realizing when something is obsolete and not realizing when something that was really successful is no longer successful and is out of date. As I mentioned earlier, at Attended, when we were growing as fast as we sort of took the approach that again we knew whatever we put in place was going to be irrelevant in 3 to 6 months based on how fast we were growing. And it's really important to kind of keep tabs on what people are doing and ensure that they are doing the most quote unquote up to date things that you want them to be doing. Otherwise, you run the risk of like running a dated program, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think these are three very critical points. And effective communication, I do agree that everyone's in different stages, like maturity wise, and understanding where, like, having that effective communication and collaboration is just so important because not everyone's going to be like talking at the same level as you are, right? So that is critical. I see a lot of the challenges in startups when I worked is, yes, like you talked about, speed and quality and having that sweet spot, and the especially the strategies or any kind of tools that are outdated, frameworks, and even to all listeners listening, it's very important to keep up to date. Now that's very evolving and AI is coming into play. I mean, as mentioned, of course, you want to put the human connection at the forefront, but knowing what's going to really help scale, working smarter, not harder. So, a lot of great stuff there. Thank you, Rob, for that. And yeah, so when things get tough, though, maybe there is a team burnout or pushback, what grounds you as a leader?
Like I said, I've always had this intrinsic desire to help people. I think if you are in CS and you don't feel that, it's going to be a very long, lonely career. So, I mean, I think for me, that's what grounds me is realizing that, these are people that we're talking about, both the customers and the staff. Um, like something that a new CS leader can do ultimately is come in and put in place all these fancy new processes, not realizing that they are just adding more work onto the CSM's plates. And that's a quick way to get burnout and realizing that you can't just keep like piling more onto people more and more and more and more and more without something, being displaced as a result of it. And that if they're again that they're human beings, that for me is a very grounding thing. It's sort of seeing someone kind of raise a hand and say, hey, I can't keep going like this. It's too much.
Hmm.
Which, as I said, is something that I encourage people to do and say, and tell me when things are not working so that we can fix them.
Yeah.
That for me has always been, has been the moment is the human being on the other side of, historically the table, but now the screen in most cases.
Hmm. Exactly. Like, I think the people, the executives especially, who come to me, they keep saying, like, Vinash is like overwhelming, I'm burnt out. And managing time, there's like extra tasks that are not necessary, right? And I mean, the solution is like AI, but it's not really about the AI. Like you said, when I bring these questions up, topics up, and like talk and be assertive to your manager. And like, that's what it's all about, like voicing it, right? Like you said. So these are like real challenges that people are facing, but it's okay to have these issues, right? I mean, it's you're not alone in this. So I love how you talked about how that makes you grounded as a leader. So going into leadership now, away from tech, we talked about human connection at the forefront, but what does clarity mean to you in executive leadership, and why is that important?
Yeah, it's as a CS leader, you have a lot on your plate. If you probably, if you're VP level, you probably are overseeing three, four, five different departments. Even if you're director level, you probably are overseeing a lot of different teams who are doing a lot of different things, or a lot of different people or types of people that are doing lots of different things, even if it's not formalized. And it's really easy for you to get a lot of complex thoughts in your brain and think that it's a lot of things that seem second nature to you because you spend all day thinking about it are not is not second nature to other people. People can't read your mind, which is like the classic leadership, sort of foil. And so I think being really, really crisp about the things that you're saying, being very selective and deliberate about how you communicate to your team or teams is really important. Um, Doing a lot of exposition when you are explaining things to the team is very important. Um, and keeping your messaging sort of simple is better than like over inundating people with way too much detail. So knowing your audience when you're talking about something is really important. Setting direction appropriately is really important. One of the things that I have always felt very sort of honored and touched by is the consistent feedback I get anytime I've left an organization that was some permutation of I felt like under your leadership, uh, it was clear like what we should be focused on and what we should be doing. The priorities were clear under your leadership, and I always have valued that highly. So being clear means setting the direction, setting the priorities, and consistently communicating those things without making it a moving target, um, with
Mhm.
appropriate explanation and context for why you're doing what you're doing and how it benefits the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I love how you said consistently communicating it, because I think we start something, some leaders, and like there's that vision, and then we're so focused on, we get caught up in those like tasks and priorities, and how do we finish it quickly? And then it's just like, oh, we forgot about the bigger picture, right? It's that kind of balance that we have. So consistently, that consistent messaging, like you said, and having those like just those small pieces, right? The nuances aspect of it, right, is very important, right? So I appreciate everything you're saying. Um, yeah. So what's one shift do you feel like every emerging leader should make, right? So I know we talked on a few, but what else would you want to add to
Yeah.
that?
I'm going to butcher the last name here, but Patrick Lencioni, the author of Death by Meetings, has another book that people are maybe familiar with, which is First Team Principles. I think that is a real maturity moment, a sort of acceleration moment for a leader, is understanding who your first team is and the things that they care about and delivering that value first. For first time VPs, definitely it is a challenge to realize that your job is only partly to make sure that CSMs are doing what they need to do and support people are answering tickets quickly, but that there's now a fluency that you're expected to have at the leadership, at the executive leadership level around some of the core metrics uh, that are important to the business beyond just gross and net retention. So understanding things like LTV and CAC and cost of service, and being able to plan and deliver value against those things as um, your primary responsibility, I think is a hard lesson to learn. That certainly for me was a hard lesson to learn. I
Hmm.
think I'm still learning it if I'm being candid, but we're all on our own
I think
journeys, right? So
yeah, yeah,
exactly. So yeah, I think that is like a real that's a moment I think for a lot of leaders
yeah.
when you move out of that sort of like I'm a CS person role into I'm an executive role.
Right. Yeah. And that's exactly what this podcast is about, is to kind of, showcase like, it's a real challenge, everyone out there, it's not, you're not alone, right? And then having these like, real conversations from executives and how to look at that, because executive is very different. So, that shift, that mindset shift, that energetic shift, just I mean, there's nothing like wrong or it's not about you, right? It's just literally how you're showing up at every single level, right? And that's like the emerge shift that I want to kind of talk about for emerging leaders. I just wanted to point out there, but yeah, this was all great. Thank you so much. So before we wrap up, I'd love to hear what's next for you, Robs. What kind of impact or vision are you most excited about creating the next chapter of your journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said earlier, CS does not have a clear best practices around AI. So I've been spending a lot of time recently, basically studying the GTM engineering guidelines and tactics and strategies. And I think the best CS leaders are right now shoring up their own technical skills in that capacity, learning N8N, learning, any tool you can possibly get your hands on, and building out some of the stuff themselves. I think a lot of CS leaders probably have reached a point in their career where they are visionary and directional and great with customers and can understand a problem and build process against it, but have relied historically on operations teams and enablement teams on a lot of the tooling component of things. I think that right now the best CS leaders, the smartest CS leaders at least, the ones who are going to really thrive in the AI era, are the ones that are actually going out themselves and learning how to be to some degree an AI engineer without overcomplicating it. But
Right.
being really self-reliant and being able to build a lot of this stuff themselves, I think is really critical. So for me, that's I think what's next over the next couple of years is really like fleshing out that playbook and finding that to use your phrase sweet spot of where CSMs actually do deliver the most value as AI gets increasingly you know
Yeah.
useful and smart.
That's great. No, well, I'm excited for you. You have a lot to offer, so much success. Yeah. So I just hope things, like just excited about what's in store for you, right? It's all about thriving, right? And that's exactly who I help, right? So helping leaders thrive in their next level of leadership. So yeah, quick fire round. Yeah, to end on a fun note. So rapid fire. So just kind of short answers I ask everyone. So morning habit that keeps you grounded.
I have been a paid subscriber to Headspace for almost 10 years now. I
Love
find
that.
even just 10 minutes a day of meditation after a couple of months gives you a clarity and an ability to sort of think through things and honestly sleep better. That's a few other things have
Exactly,
afforded me.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. I love that. Like I just was looking at Headspace yesterday and I was telling my friends like it's really important to have your health a priority during this time for executives because we take those things for granted. But balancing your health and your meditation, your mind all at once while doing this, you can actually make a more bigger impact that way, right? So,
Yep.
very important. And a book, podcast, or resource that changed how you lead.
I love Kim Scott's Radical Candor. I know it's not like a very original answer. Most people love that book, but that for me and the way she lays out different types of feedback, it has really helped me stay focused on delivering valuable, productive feedback to people at all levels. So I'm a huge fan of that book. I think everyone should read it.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that. Yeah, I mean, I'm always on podcasts or like reading books and it just kind of switches everything, right? It just shifts your mindset, everything. And like, uplifts you. So just taking the time to do that for all the listeners will make a difference. Yeah, so and how can people connect or follow your work, Rob?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not a huge social media person. Sorry, everybody. But LinkedIn is the best place to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Well, I hope everyone follows Rob. He's amazing. So go to his LinkedIn and connect with him. But yeah, so Rob, thank you so much. This was an energizing and insightful conversation. Thank you for sharing your leadership journey and the lessons you learned from scaling with clarity and purpose. So to everyone listening, if this episode sparks something in you, follow Voices of Impact on LinkedIn and your favorite podcast form. Every conversation is designed to help you think deeper, bleed bolder, and create meaningful impact in your work and life. So until next time, stay focused, stay inspired, and keep leading with heart and intention.